Welcome to season 1 of the Overcomers podcast. We are going to talk to you about overcoming adversity and living your dreams. If you've ever struggled, this is for you. We're going to talk to you about such struggles as
drug addiction, relationship struggles, parenting struggles,
incarceration, being displaced from your home. We're even going to touch on things such as sexual assault, or even if you just struggle with finding your purpose, finding your passion, being part of a community. This is for you. Like I said, if you've ever struggled, this is for you. So welcome to the Overcomers podcast, where we're going to help you to overcome the adversities of life and live your dreams.
Yo, 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 it's your girl and boy CT.
I'm Travis Barnes.
And I'm Cindy Barnes.
And we're the founders of Journey 333 and the founders of the Overcomer podcast. The Overcomer podcast is sponsored by Journey 333, which is not just a gym, it's a coaching center. It's a place where you can go to look better, live better, and feel better. There's a lot of threes there, and I challenge you to come in and find out more about them. But with all that aside, let's talk about who we have on the show today. We got with us a legend, a living legend. It's Elaine Lalanne. Elaine Lalanne, there's so many notes that I have about her because I really just want to do her great justice for everything that she's done. Elaine Lalanne is wife to Jack LaLanne. She has been a pioneer in the broadcasting industry. I can't wait for her to tell you about when her and Jack first met. She was actually a television broadcaster when that happened. Over the years, Elaine has been an integral part of the Jack LaLanne television show, which aired on TV from 1951 to 1983. That is a long-running TV show. She has been part of the Jack LaLanne Power and Fusion juicer infomercials. She's made appearances on countless television programs, such as The Today Show, The Early Show, Friends, Fox and Friends, Howard Stern. So she's just awesome. At 95, at a very young 95, she is still doing full body push-ups on her toes. So Elaine Lalanne, welcome to the show.
Thank you. You are a dynamic duo, let me tell you that, okay?
Thank you. You know, Elaine, before we get on with the show and start asking you different questions, if you could, I'd love for you to also share the books that we got going on. You have a book that's already out. I'd love to just let our viewers know.
Yes, it came out last year. I've written, I'm on my 7th book now, wow. but recently, the last year is If You Want to Live, Move. This is Jack. And then my co-author, Jamie Brinkus, putting the boom back into boomers. He wanted to do a book with me, putting the boom back into boomers. And we have, there's lots of inspirational stuff in it. And I think it's on Amazon if anybody wants it. We have part 1, Renew, part 2, Reshape, and part 3 is Refuel. So and then I've got in the back, I've got a little picture of me on the television, and this is when I met Jack right there. That's before we even dated. And then there's Jack pulling 70 boats with 70 people in Long Beach Harbor, handcuffed and shackled. And
was 70 years old when he did that?
We invented the first stretcher, first instant breakfast. There's me on television. And so we've got a lot of these little pictures in the back. And there's Jack with 3 pounds of fat on the lecture.
Wow.
Anyway,
awesome.
That's us younger, when we were younger.
So
anyway, this is on Amazon. If you want to live, move, putting the boom back into boomers. And the other one I'm doing with Greg Justice, it's called, this is Greg's idea. He wanted to do one about Jack, his legacy. Pride and discipline. Jack was always talking about pride and discipline. The pride and discipline, the legacy of Jack LaLanne in his own words and those he's inspired. I've got Lou Ferrigno's doing the foreword. I've got Keith Morrison saying some things about Jack. These are all people but it's mostly his writings. It's things that he's written and nobody's ever seen before, like Dare to Dream, The River of Life, contribute to your longevity? Are you a walking billboard? We even got some of his quips and humor. He was a very, very funny man. And visualization, how he visualized his handcuffed, shackled, and towing a 1,000-pound boat from Alcatraz to the mainland, and things like that. So that's another one that'll be coming out hopefully in a few months.
Just amazing.
Anyway,
Just
Brian
amazing.
just in the legacy of Jack LaLanne. Look for it.
Look for it sure. You even have Arnold in that book, right? Arnold is awesome.
Arnold tells about, how he met Jack, and he says that he pooped us out.
That's
They met him
awesome.
on the beach in the Venice Beach, and they went into doing a contest, doing things, and Arnold always tells a story about how Jack he had tremendous endurance, and so he pooped him out.
That's terrific. Well, I love those two titles. I love what those stories are about. And I love the fact that you're sharing with people that if you want to live, move. It seems like that is also part of your legacy. I've always found it impressive. I've run into you at Idea World a couple of times where Cindy and I typically travel to it annually, except for this past year when everything's been shut down.
Yeah.
But when you're there, I mean, everybody's circling around you while you're doing push-ups on your toes. So I think that you have a lot to teach people about, stay moving to keep moving, or keep moving to stay moving, however you want to put it. I just think that's awesome.
Well, if you don't move, what happens? You atrophy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And if you've ever broken your arm, or it's in years ago they used to have been casts, and then the arm would atrophy. But if you don't move it, you'll lose it.
Yeah, right. If you don't move it, you lose it, right? Yeah. That's maybe cliche, but it's very true. Very true. Well, you've just done so much in our industry. I'd love for the people that are unaware to have a little history. So if you could take us back, I think the year might have been 1948. When did you and Jack meet?
Well, not till 1951, and we didn't date till 1953.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Okay. Okay.
Went together 6 years, and we were married 52. So there you go. Now you know the rest of the story.
Well, actually, I think there's a little fun to the story. So you were a television broadcaster when you met Jack. He was coming on to a TV show to do some of his things, and when he met you, you had a coffee in one hand. What'd you have in the other when you met the?
Well, we had an hour and a half. I was on an hour and a half show called The Les Malloy Show. We had a 12-piece orchestra left over from radio, because radio, they always had an orchestra. So we got the orchestra, and this is all brand new I'll tell you, let me go back even further. In 1948, my very first commercial was at 6 o'clock at night. Television didn't come on till 6 o'clock at night at that time. And so I got this job of opening up, coming in and with a bag of groceries and opening up the bread and going, good. And then we'd drive up, everything was live in those days. So we'd drive up to the transmitter, and I, do my commercial and leave. And that was and I got $10. Oh, that was a lot of money in those days. So anyway, that was my
just for smelling it and saying good. Yeah.
Yeah. A loaf of bread. I mean, that was a commercial, for Elaine, whatever the name of the bread was. Well, anyway, so then now television starts at 4:30 in the afternoon. So now we're starting at 4:30. And I'm on this show. I don't work for ABC. I work for the fellow Les Malloy. He was a famous disc jockey in San Francisco, and he saw me at the Emporium demonstrating 45 records. And somebody said, "Can I get Bing Crosby on 45 records?" And I said, "No, but you can get Perry Como, and he sounds just like him." And so So Les walks over because he was doing a personal appearance there. And he said, how would you like to, I'm starting a television. How would you like to be on my, come on with me as my Girl Friday? In those days, they call them Girl Fridays.
Oh, really?
And, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so they did. Co-host didn't come on till much later in life. But anyway, I was on this. So we had this show, and I booked all hour and a half of it, all the guests, and we had to drive up to the transmitter at first to transmit all this stuff. Mm-hmm. So and then when we moved downtown to the NBC building, and they rented space down there, that's when I met Jack. I had Jack on the show. I think I had him on at the transmitter though before that. And I thought we have Jack on the show, and I got this call from Oakland, and this gal says, I got a guy who could do push-ups through your whole hour and a half show. I said, oh, that would be fantastic. So he came on and did a push-ups through a whole hour and a half show. And then in 1951, he started on ABC. And that's when we were in the newsroom. And in those days, the newsroom was very small. You know how big it is today. The newsroom had 3 people that worked in the newsroom. And there were 2 other desks. One was for our show and one was for Jack's show. And so in the morning, when his show started, I would walk in with my cigarette and my chocolate donut and my bear claw. And I guess he got so sick and tired of it. Then when I'm walking by every morning, when they're getting ready for the show and I'm walking, my desk is in the back, so I have to walk past them. And so he came over and he said, you should eating bananas and apples and oranges. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't tell you this. I said, oh, yeah.
As you take a puff off the cigarette. Okay. Terrific.
But, as time went on, we got laughing and he was very funny. And so one day he brought over pictures of pink lungs, black lungs, holy lungs with holes in them. And he says, and this is what happens when you smoke. And because everybody smoked in those days.
Sure, it was cool, right?
Oh, yeah, it was cool, I guess. So anyway, I looked at that picture, and then his brother happened to pop by that day, and he said, I just quit smoking, and he said, and you know what it is? You've got black lungs, and it takes a whole year to get that out of your system. Oh my gosh. So then that hit me right. I just, bang, I quit smoking, never smoked again.
Wow.
So, and then awesome. When he was so, you couldn't be around Jack and not want to do something for your body. And so he was I went home and I started broiling everything I used to fry. I changed my whole life around. And the blues were, when I quit smoking, the blues were bluer, the greens were greener, everything, my eyes were better, my body felt better. It was an amazing thing for me, and I've been a convert ever since. There you go.
That's leading us to another subject or another area of your lives, which this show is about overcoming adversity. And throughout our lives, we get a lot of challenges. But at this time, that Jack was encouraging you to be healthy and that you couldn't be around Jack without wanting to do something, as you say. That being said, Jack was not necessarily embraced by everyone. In fact, the medical community at that time was advising against exercise, resistance training for athletes and women. Of course, it was totally off limits for women. And so can you tell us a little bit about that? Those early
right. Well, in those days, in the 40s, early 40s and 50s. It went on for a long time, but in the movies, they made the people with the big, strong men look like they didn't have any brains up here, you know. I mean, that's what they, and so I had this concept that, you know, big, tough, you know, I don't know what I had, but anyway, I I I know that people in those days, they would say you get muscle bound. You if you worked out with weights, you get muscle bound. And the doctors were against him. They called him a crackpot, a nut, and a charlatan. And they young kids would make fun of him. Let me see you comb your hair, you know, because it made it in the, maybe in the funnies, they made people that couldn't even lift their arm because they had, you know, so many muscles and things like that. So it was a lot to overcome. And the medical profession, the coaches, Jackie Jensen was a very, very famous baseball player. He was a friend of Jackson. He used to have to give him keys to go into the gym because his coach, if he found out he worked out with the weights, he would be very upset. So wow. Coaches in those days would not let their athletes work out with weights. And now it's all the rage. Jackson, he says, yesterday I was a crackpot, a nut, and a charlatan. Today I'm an authority.
Right. I mean, he's been called the godfather of fitness. You know, they talk about Steve Jobs being a visionary. They talk about Walt Disney being a visionary. But when you can go against the medical authorities and just have a belief, and when we open up Journeys, Journey 333 is our franchise. So when we open up those, we order equipment. When Jack opened up his first gym, he had to design,
make it,
invent, engineer, you know, I mean, if you could talk a little bit about that. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, what he had to do was he had you see, Jack, his last year in football, and practically the last game, he hurt his knee, and the doctor probably said he would probably never walk again. He had an operation on it, and that was in the 30s. And so he rehabilitated his knee, but he felt that it's a very important that you know, keep moving. I just lost my train of thought.
We're talking about him inventing that equipment,
the equipment. So the knee had to do with the equipment. Mm-hmm. And so he had this idea of rehabilitating the knee, and he came out with the leg extension machine. Mm-hmm. And Jack Palmer was worked for Jack at the gym, and he was a pattern maker. And he made patterns for Jack. Jack would draw out what he wanted, and then he would make the pattern, and then Jack would bring it down to a blacksmith named Paul Martin, and Paul Martin made the equipment for Jack. I still have the original leg extension machine, the original squat machine, which is now the Smith machine, and we'll have a story about how that happened, evolved into the Smith machine. Rudy Smith was a good friend of ours, and that's the squat machine, but Jack invented that, and I have the very original one, which is all hand, done, and it's all with what do you call that stuff that you put it together, not with I'm having a
as far as when you're talking about the Smith machine and the cable machine and the way that they were assembled, you guys, he invented that first cable pulley, didn't he? Is that how that was put together?
They had cables in those days, but he invented the first weight selector, which brought up the weights. And that's how he did that.
Wow.
So,
Well, many people that are listening don't realize this. In fact, resistance bands have become quite popular nowadays to work out with. And he invented that idea as well, didn't he? I mean, you guys.
yeah, that we did that in in the 1950s, early 1950s. Paul Bragg brought over this piece of rubber, like it was about this long, and he said, "Look, Jack, what could you do with that?" And so Jack had this great big idea, and we went to a manufacturer, and we had molds made and rubber pulled into them and poured into them, and the molds. So the first glamour stretcher was born at that time. So
Glamour stretcher. Glamour stretcher was what it was called.
yeah, glamour
Now,
stretcher, knees away for men. Right, right.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so getting back to the leg extension machine, I was trying to think about the word welded.
Oh, okay, yeah. All right. So you needed a welder.
The word welded floated from my brain. But it was all hand welded, all handmade and all done in those days. And then later on, Paul Martin, as people left Jack's gym, they opened their own gyms, and then they would go to Paul Martin and have these the leg extension machine made. They'd have the squat machine made, and so that's how it all started. And Jack never patented any of this because who knew he didn't know about patents in those days, and so then it just evolved, and that's how it's. I don't think there's ever. I mean, probably with the new inventions now. Rudy Smith took the squat machine and made new innovations on it, but so
very, very interesting.
did you ever have a word float from your mind? I could not think of the word weld, and
I have it happen all the time. Yes. Yeah. Sometimes our own child's name floats from our brain. All right. Oh, yeah. Oh, no. So I just find this so inspiring as an entrepreneur. I think I have vision, but then when I listen to Jack LaLanne, his story about actually having to engineer, weld, design, just kind of create in his mind the way that he thinks that people should be exercising. He actually had, I opened up gyms because I thought it was a good fit for me. He actually opened up the first gym, the first health spa.
1936, right. And that's when he had this dream, Dare to Dream. That's one of his things he's written about. Yes, he designed he designed it in his head. He took, after he met Paul Bragg, he bought Gray's Anatomy, and Gray's Anatomy he read from cover to cover and back to front. He knew everything about the body, workings of the body. And then later on, he became a chiropractor, but he never practiced because in those days of what the chiropractors were not recognized by the medical profession. So therefore, he had doctors working out at his gym, and he didn't want to I didn't want to lose them. So he just kept it quiet for quite a while, but he has a degree in chiropractic. So he knew everything about the body. And so when he designed these things, he knew what would work and what would not work. And he used himself as a guinea pig. He always would say, I'm a guinea pig. I'll try this, I'll try that, And that's how he came up with a lot. And he visualized. And you were talking about, he had a great visualization. Yes, he visualized what he wanted. And so everything that he's ever done, he visualized himself when he did his swim from Alcatraz. He visualized himself coming out of the water. We have that in our new book, Pride and Discipline.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So let's just take a minute for the listeners, and let's just think. I'd love everybody to just kind of catch on to this, because whether you're a fitness enthusiast that's listening in and you're enjoying some of the equipment that you work out with today, if you're a gym owner, if you're an entrepreneur, whoever you are, let's think about some of the things that Jack had pioneered. So he was rehabbing his knee before rehab was a thing. He became a chiropractor before chiropractic was accepted. He was a manufacturer of fitness equipment before there was a such thing as manufacturing fitness equipment. He had the first health spa, right? And going against a total grain for a vision, for a belief, let that all inspire and let that sink in. Have you ever believed in something but had other people tell you that you were a crackpot or that your dream was just crazy, but you pursued it anyway? Let Jack LaLanne and his story inspire you to do just such a thing. That's fantastic. Did I capture some of the things that you're pioneering?
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. I just, you
Okay, well,
you get a sitting ovation from me right now. But if I stand up, you'll lose me.
well, thank you. Because it's so special to
That
me.
was beautiful. Yeah.
I like fitness to have you on the show, and Cindy, did you have a question?
Well, I did. I had a couple. I know, first of all, it's such an honor to have you on here, for sure. Were you one of the very first women in networking, like speaking on television? You had to have been, right? Hosting commercials or TV shows. Were you?
Well, maybe one of.
One of,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, probably on television. There were a lot of people in those days. Betty White was doing kind of the same thing that I was doing in San Francisco, and there were like 3 shows like I was on. There was Del Courtney, who was an orchestra leader on CBS, and he had an hour-and-a-half show, and then there was NBC. They had another gal over there that they didn't have the music, but we had an orchestra, and so did the other CBS. But on NBC, these were all at about the same time, and there were a lot of women's in television at that time, and also in Los Angeles. Remember, I'm in San Francisco, so I wouldn't put myself in the category of probably one of hundreds, but not,
Yeah.
but I was one of the
Definitely a
first people.
pioneer of that. for
Huh?
sure. You were definitely pioneering.
Yes, it was pioneering.
Yeah,
It really was. Yeah.
And so my other question, you guys did a juicer.
Yes, and we didn't do that until at the end of 1999 or beginning of 2000. But Jack juiced all his life.
He did. Okay.
Yeah, I mean he started out pressing. I mean, they had some kind of a press that they pressed in the early days. So, but he's always had a juicer. But the juice, he didn't design any juicer. We got involved with this particular juicer because it had when we came out with our juicer, the holes were about this big, but our juicer had one that you could put the whole, several carrots in, and then of course that took off and everybody went into the bigger hole to put the thing in, because you'd have to cut up everything and then put it in this little hole,
Oh,
but
yeah.
now everybody's got one of these big ones you can put a whole apple in and all that stuff.
Right.
And they've got all different kinds now.
Well,
But anyway, I've been doing a lot of research on Jack's life, and I have so much memorabilia. I would take me hours to tell you about it. He taught me. I remember him when we first went out nationwide. He said to me, "I'm going to Los Angeles to start a show," and he says, "You're going to do my lectures and you'll do the show for me up here until we can get on on tape or on film. So I'm taking to the airport and I've never done a lecture before. I can't do that. And he said one thing to me, and I want to tell everybody this, that if you know your subject and what you do, you can talk on it. And that hit me right between the eyes. And I said to myself, well, I do know my subject. I do know so I guess I'll just talk what I know about and just be me. Yeah. Sometimes we have to think we have to be somebody else and we have to be a certain way. Even when Jack started on television, he says, I thought you had to be a certain way to be on television. You had to do this or this. If people would learn to just be themselves, because there's only one of each of you. There's only one of me, only one of Jack. And we're all individualized in this life. And so therefore, we have something to give and we have our own personality. And so we can't be somebody else. We can only be us. And that song, I gotta be me. Jack, he was a good singer too. And that's how he sang to me our first date. Because you're mine, da, da, da. We had to wait for to go into a restaurant for our table with some of his friends. And so the piano player, he used to sing around San Francisco. So piano player knew him and he says, come on over, Jack, sing a song. So he sings this song to me. Wow. And I said, oh my gosh, I danced with him at a company party and I've danced, and he's a good dancer. My gosh, he sings too.
A dancer, a singer, he can do push-ups for an hour and a half. He's an inventor, he's a visionary. Oh, so terrific. That is such a great little thing that you shared about just, there's only one of you, and just being ourselves and giving ourselves permission to do that. And, just being proud of that fact. Let me ask you, what lessons from the life of Jack LaLanne, or from the life that you've had together, what do you think are some of the biggest things that people could glean if you really wanted the lessons to be the legacy? What do you think are some of the most important things for people?
Well, I've written, Maria Shriver asked me to do a little piece, and she said, what are the 3 words that that describe kind of your life? And I came up, and then I'm thinking it back with Jack. So I came up with the word ARC, A-R-C, and then I added the H to it. Actually, my son said, Mom, that would really be an arch. Mm-hmm. So attitude for A. You are your attitude. If you don't like yourself, change it. You can change your life and you can save your life. And resistance for R of the arc. Resistance is a key to building your muscles. If you don't have resistance, it helps build your muscles, right? Mm-hmm. Resisting the food that's undermining your health. Mm-hmm. And then, so your body needs oxygen. And so how do you get your oxygen? How do you really get it to make you feel good? That oxygen makes you feel so good, and when you work out and when you exercise. So resistance is the second word. The third word is consistency. Being consistent about everything you do. In other words, you don't slack off. That's not being consistent. I mean, if you decide you're going to work out and you're going to go on you're going to eat right and exercise, then be consistent about it. So make it a habit. And then I the last word, the letter would be H for harmony. So if you have all this, then you have harmony in your life. And so, because your attitude, it starts with your attitude. But Jack always, and where does your attitude come from? Right between your ears, as Jack would say. Your mind is a mind. And right here, what wiggles your finger? What everything starts here. And so if you have a negative mind and a negative attitude, well, it's just going to go downhill. You can either go uphill or you can go downhill. You can't, so you have to make up your mind whether you're going to do it. So moderation is one of the things that Jack taught me. He says, if you do everything in moderation, you cannot go wrong. And you train, when you train for life. Your bank account and your health account are synonymous. They're, you can't, the more you put in, the more you can take out. And you wouldn't put water in the gas tank of your car. So, and Jack never sacrificed strength for endurance. He believed in endurance. In other words, a lot of people are just build up and boy, they get a lot of strength, but they don't have that endurance. And that's why he trained for endurance. And he believed in balance. So if you have all this thing, you have a balanced life. So, but you don't jump from the bottom ring up to the top ring on a ladder. You make haste slowly. You step one step at a time. So those are some of the things that you asked me, what he's taught me and what I've learned through life. Those are just a few of the things.
Those are good words of wisdom right there.
Your waistline is your lifeline. That's that's one of his sayings. He's got so many of them. And the river of life, that's another thing that's in our new book, Pride and Discipline, how he talks about the river of life, your bloodstream. Your bloodstream is a river and it goes through your body. And what you put in, is going through your body. So when you eat properly, think of all that river of life just, being clean and wonderful and working for you.
Wow. There's some pretty good quotes right here. Waistline is your lifeline. Thinking of the ingredients into our bloodstream is that river of life. That is a great analogy.
And anything is one of his sayings is anything is possible in life if you make it happen, and you can make it happen. And he always, one of the things that I remember is, are you a walking billboard? A walking billboard. Oh, when the way you walk, are you slouch? How do you act when you, and what do you say when you're walking, and or you're being with people? What does your body say?
Wow,
So
that's so good. That's so good. Tony Robbins talks about the emotional triad, and he says that the emotional triad is three things. That emotions don't come to us; we go to emotions. And what he says is that it's how we posture ourselves, which is exactly what you're saying. It's what we think about, which is what you're saying, and the language that we use to speak to ourselves. I feel like Jack LaLanne was, the inspiration for some of these mind right maniacs that we have today. I think it's Todd Durkin, and he's now the mind right maniac. But I hear through Todd Durkin some of the wisdom of Jack LaLanne. And of course, Jack LaLanne was talking about the emotional triad before Tony Robbins wrote it down on paper and gave it to the world.
Well, he does. He writes a lot about the brain. I mean, almost everything that you'll see in this book that will how everything starts up here, but he makes things so simple. I mean, a lot of times I'll read a book and it sounds it's so. It doesn't hit me because there's too many words, and then he hits it right on the nail, and
That's awesome.
makes you want to wake up.
That's terrific. So this book will be coming out in the next few months, and we already have the book out. Well, we have several books out, but the most recent book is that If You Want to Live, Move. And then, of course, the Jack LaLanne book, Pride and Discipline, is coming out in the next few months as well, right?
Yeah, this is the cover, but this is my birthday present birthday card from, he sent me the cover of the book, and that's the cover of the book, and that's from Greg Justice. That's my co-author. So
Greg Justice is an amazing human being. I have
yes, he is. Yes, he is. And Todd Dirk, all those guys. I mean, they're so great. And of course, I've given the Jack LaLanne Award to Todd Durkin.
Yes.
And when he accepted, were you there when he was?
I was there. Yeah. No, that's terrific. Well, let me ask you this. First, if you have any, you've given a lot of wisdom. I don't want to end this episode without giving you any final words of wisdom that you'd like to leave, or if you feel like you've given us a lot in the last few minutes, then I definitely want people to be able to follow you, to be able to keep on learning from you. And so I'd love it if you'd provide the way.
I just, yours is about overcoming obstacles. We have a thing in the book called Overcoming Obstacles, and where Jack tells about his knee. His last at football, he said he'd never walk again. I fell and I hurt my knee, and I had a cast on it for like 3 months, and I was determined I could either go one way or the other. I could feel sorry for myself and have myself a little pity party, or I could say to myself, tomorrow's another day, we're going to get better, and you're going to get, in every way, you're going to get better. So every day, and my mother used to say this, in every day and every way, I'm getting better and better. So I said that to myself. And so I would just take it and just bend it and bend it and bend it and bend it. Hurt. But I had this visualization that it was going to be perfect. And it ended up being, I could touch my heel to my butt. And that was many years ago, but that's just one little obstacle that I overcame. And I've overcome a lot of them. I lost my daughter when she was 21 and in an automobile accident. Those are things you can have pity parties over, or you can go on with life. And so what I want to say to everybody is that life goes on, and you're here, and you've got to keep going. And if you have your little pity party and you want to feel sorry for yourself and stay in bed or stay in your room or feel sorry for yourself, then that's your problem. But if you don't want to do that, then just get going and just be positive and visualize yourself as whole and perfect. And that there's the old mind working on it again. So
what would you say at the age of 95, and with everything that you've done and overcome, what would you say, since there's so many people listening to this episode that, maybe thinking about fitness, or sometimes maybe they use the excuse and they say, oh, I'm too old to maybe even just exercise.
Oh, that's it. A lot of people say that, or I've got a bad back, or well, if you've got a bad back, do you have a bad arm? You could work your arms, or you could, you can do this, or even if you're in a wheelchair, and you can't even move your legs, you could do something up here, and, and at least keep the blood circulating and somewhere. And if you can't move this part, find a part that you can move, just anything that you can, be positive about. And I think a lot of people, they look at these basketball players running around with their wheelchairs and playing basketball. They do it, So it's all in, again, goes right back to the old mind. You got to make up your mind. And Jack used to say, I said, Jack, I said something about it. He says, well, it's mind over matter. I said, Jack, would you mind if I do this or that? And he says, well, it's mind over matter. If you don't have a mind, it doesn't matter. So, and then I said, Jack, I'll be there shortly. He says, I'll be there longly. And I have a lot of that stuff in the book too. You know, I said, a lot of his humor. It's really funny. The humor part has got a lot of cute stuff in it. You know,
the clips. I think that's great. You know, I think that what I'm just learning from you that I'd like the listeners to grab hold of. I'm a fan of Wayne Dyer, and I think of his quotes a lot. And he says, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I like what you were saying about if you have a bad back, do you have bad arms? Or if you're in a wheelchair, there's still things that you can do. So maybe the encouragement here, if I could almost kind of summarize that, it's like, are you looking for what's missing, or are you looking at what you can still do, right? You know, if we're looking at the back, that's what we'll be focused on. But if we look at the opportunities we still have, we can engage in life and, you know, continue to take steps to be healthy. So that's really, really good. Really good. So if people want to learn more from you, Elaine, what is the best way for people to follow you, or for people to contact you, or to continue to keep on learning from you?
Well, we have jacklalaine.com, and we have Shop LaLanne. We've got a lot of his shows. There's 5 shows on each video, and we have like 50 of them, and we have them on our Shop LaLanne on jacklalaine.com, and there's 2 N's in LaLanne, LaLanne. So if you look around in there, we've got t-shirts and we've got hats and all sorts of stuff. So but we've got even, I don't have the glamour stretcher anymore. That was, people will still write in and said, do you have a glamour stretcher? And
wow.
Everybody else has got a stretcher.
Should have a museum with all these things, you know. It's just amazing. Amazing. Let me ask you this. What's the best social media to follow you on? Is it Facebook, or is it Instagram, or?
Oh, I'm on Facebook. Yeah. You know, Claire that works for me, she said, well, they laugh and they get a kick out of it. She'll say, hey, do something. Well, what am I going to do? I don't even think. I just do something, or I'll maybe do a exercise, or maybe I'll do yesterday, I think I posted, and if anybody's in Orlando, Florida, go to the NBC Cabana Beach Resort Hotel, Universal. It's right there at the Universal theme park. And they, on the 2nd floor of the hotel, they have a 5,000 square foot Jack LaLanne fitness studio. And they have all, in that 5,000 square feet, they have all of Jack's memorabilia. They've got his jumpsuit. They've got his paddleboard. He paddleboarded from the Farallon Islands, 26 miles and 9.5 hours. It's got all sorts of old juicers, and then they have a show running up there. So if you're ever there, that would be fun for you to see.
Wow.
At the Cabana Beach. The hotel is really fun too. It's all retro. Yeah. So
people should definitely research the fitness achievements of Jack LaLanne.
Yeah, we're on Instagram and Facebook, and if you just go and put our names in, you'll find some of the lectures I've done and some of the interviews I've done, and of course a lot of Jack. You'll see a lot of Jack on that. Yeah. He talks a bit. There's a lot of him on all over if you look his name up.
Well, you may not.
Neither Jack or I are people who like to toot our horns, So if you don't ask me, I won't tell.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm even inspired. Not only am I inspired by all the different things, whether it be pulling 70 boats with 70 people in them or things such as that, but I challenge the listeners, look up the Jack LaLanne push-up. See if you can even do a push-up like Jack LaLanne. He used to do it with his hands stretched out over top of his head, off of his fingertips. Isn't that right, Elaine?
You know,
There's a.
I want to say to everyone too, this is a little thing that I saw years and years ago. It was during World War II, and I'd lost my friend in Iwo Jima, and my mother bought this book of sayings, and there was something that stood out in my life from that time, and 'tis the set of the soul that sees the goal, and not the storms of life. And that stayed with me all this time.
Could you say that one more time? I'd just like to absorb it. Could you just say that one more time?
'Tis the set of the soul that sees the goal, and not the storms of life. And it just hit me, and that it was a beautiful, beautiful saying. I don't know, it's an anonymous saying, I think, but it's helped me through life.
Yeah.
And I hope it might help somebody else, My father said to me one time, I said, how could I ever thank you for what you've given me, And he said, you never thank me. You pass on what you've learned to other people. And if you just pass it on. And that's what Greg is going to do too. He's going to be passing on things that he knows on to other people. So those are just little things that, don't get me into philosophy. I can keep going forever.
I love it. I'm a very philosophical person. I appreciate the bonuses that we've been getting right now.
I'm impressed with you, the way you summarize everything. I mean, he's got a brain talk about a good brain. I mean, he takes that and absorbs everything, and then he makes it so simple and makes it just like, well, this is the way, and the categories.
Oh, thank you.
You're something.
Oh, thank you. I really enjoy learning from people like yourself. I'm taking a lot of notes today, and I want to make sure I've processed it in a way that I can really apply the knowledge. In fact, this is something that everybody should know. As you mentioned that, and as you mentioned what Greg Justice is doing with a Pass It On award, or essentially a Pay It Forward award, isn't that how Jack spread his message of fitness when there were so many people that didn't know what he knew? Because of course, he was pioneering something against the medical community and against many popular beliefs. What would he say to people wouldn't he just tell people to just kind of pay it forward or pass it on? Or how was he spreading his message of fitness initially?
Being the example.
Okay, being the example.
He said, if you are an example, you pass that on. Because if it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Jack did everything very simply. I mean, he tried to make everything simple so that we could put it and roll it around in our brain and figure it out. So
that's such a good message too. That we all have to walk our talk, right? Just so important. Just make sure that you are not only spreading the wisdom of fitness, but that you are an example, because people definitely follow our actions more than they follow our words. And boy, if I could only hope to do half the things that Jack LaLanne did, that would just be an amazing achievement in itself, so thank you so much.
Well, he was amazing. I mean, he really did. But he never felt that he says, I'm just getting started. He was on his way out, and he says, I'm just getting started. Because neither one of us had an ego. We never thought, he never thought himself as a celebrity or anybody famous. He always, all he cared about in his life, and till the day he died, he says, all I want to do is help people to help themselves. That's another simple statement. I mean, simplicity was his life. Saying it in a simple way so that everybody could understand it, and be an example.
Such a good mission. Help people help themselves. And that doesn't just come from showing them what to do, but challenging their mindset the way that Jack did, because maybe it begins right here, right? So
Yeah.
that's terrific.
That's right. Right. So
Elaine Lalanne, thank you. Thank you so much. Follow her on Facebook. Check out the book that's coming out. Check out the books that are out. Check out the Jack LaLanne website. Check it all out. Elaine, this has been a big honor for us. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, it's been an honor for me too. And as I said before, you can summarize, and I'd love to hear that summary that you gave.
For sure.
That was a beautiful summary, and right off the top of his head,
Yeah.
Well, thank you, and thanks for being on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Overcomers Podcast, sponsored by Journey 333. When I am not hosting the Overcomers Podcast, I am working at one of our fitness franchises so that I can continue to help people overcome adversity on a daily basis. That's right, people come to the Journey 333 fitness franchises because they want a coach in their life. They want somebody to help them overcome the adversities of life, motivate them to higher levels of greatness, bring out their potential, help them lose weight, get off medications, fight depression, fight anxiety. That's what we do on a regular basis. If you feel like you want your life to be about helping more people to overcome their adversities, if you feel like you're an overcomer and you want to create more overcomers, then maybe owning a Journey 333 franchise would be for you. To find out more, go to www.journeyfitness333.com.